Okay, so this is called Asking for Miracles on Chanukah, and the objectives today are threefold. Number one, we're going to go on a tefilah archaeology adventure, okay? I don't think I've done this in tefilah class with you this year, but it's possible we did this in the past, is that, just quick overview, who created the text of tefilah?
The Ashkenazim Hagadola.
The Ashkenazim Hagadola, right? So when they created it, it was all part of Torah Sheba'al Peh, and it wasn't written down until much later. So that's how you have lots of different versions of the nusach tefilah, of the text of tefilah. So today's going to involve going through, like, trying to figure out, like, going on a hunt to figure out what the real correct nusach is. Okay, I love this stuff, but I don't know if you've been exposed to it, and so maybe it's not everyone's cup of tea, but you'll tell me. Second objective is we're going to try to understand al-Hanisim and Modim. Okay, I know this is the last day of Chanukah, but we still got some another al-Hanisim opportunity. And then, okay, speaking of which, maybe I'm obviously not poskening for you, but maybe convincing you to introduce a new bakasha into your mincha for the last tefilah of Chanukah 2020. Okay, so this has a practical outcome, perhaps. Okay, I don't know, those of you who daven mincha, so we'll see. Okay, so here we go. I assume we're familiar enough with al-Hanisim to I don't need to go read and translate all of this, but what I'm going to do is like this. Okay, I'm going to read through compare this to the Rambam's version. Okay, this is Ashkenaz on the left, Rambam on the right. And I'm going to read through it, and then you tell me what is different about the Rambam's version and the Ashkenaz version. Okay, so I'll read and translate the Rambam as we go, and you just like either look on the Ashkenaz or like keep in mind. Al-Hanisim v'al-Hagvuros v'al-Milchamos v'al-Teshuos v'al-Pedus v'al-Prokan. So on the miracles, the mighty acts, the wars, the salvations, the redemption, and the salvation or redemption. Shasisa imanav ima v'sina b'yamim hem v'zmanzeh, that you did for us and with our forefathers in those days at this time. And there's like some small differences. Don't care about the small differences. Just look at the big differences. Bimim Matisia bin Yochanan Kohen Gadol Chashmonai Uvanav. In the days of Matisia, son of Yochanan the Kohen Gadol, the Hasmonean and his sons. Kisha Amda Malchus Yavan Harisha al Amcha Beis Yisrael. When the evil Greek kingship arose and on your people, the house of your people Israel. Levatla mitor sacha. To negate abolish them from their Torah, and to remove them from the statutes of your will. And you, in your great mercy, you stood for them at the time of their trouble. And you judged their case. And you took up their cause. And you took vengeance on their behalf. And you put the many into the strong into the hands of the weak. V'rabim biad me'utim, and the many into the hands of the few, utamim biad tahorim, and the impure into the hands of the pure, urashayim biad tzadikim, and the wicked into the hands of the righteous, uposhim biad osei sorsacha, and the sinners into the hands of those who do your Torah. V'asisa lecha shem gadol ba'olamecha, and you made for yourself a great name in this world, in your world. U'amcha Yisrael asisa pelev nisim, and for your people Israel you did wonder and miracles. Kishem she'asisa imahem nisim ugvuros, just like you did miracles and mighty acts for them. So too, do miracles and mighty acts at this time. Do miracles and mighty acts for us at this time and season. And on all of these, Hashem, our God, we thank you. So again, I don't care about little word differences like Osei Torsecha and Oskei Torsecha, but what major differences did you notice?
At the end,
yeah,
it says, like, do miracles for us now. That's not anywhere really in the Ashkenaz one.
Okay, good. That is the main difference, right? Is at the end of the Ashkenaz version, we just say that Hashem made a name for himself, and we say that we established these days of Chanukah, lahodos ulhalal shimcha hagadol. But the Rambam has a request for miracles, okay, that just like Hashem did miracles for them, he should also do miracles for us. Okay, and there's one more major difference between the Rambams and our version, which is also in the yellow portion.
It acknowledges it's a nace.
It acknowledges it's a nace. That's also true. Actually, yeah. That's you're right. It doesn't actually say that in the Ashkenazic version, so it acknowledges it's nace. I'll give you a hint though, and the hint is one. There's someone I know, Rabbi Dave Markowitz, who he used to make. I haven't been over in a long time, but to his house for Shabbos. But he used to make cholent, and it was really good. And one time we asked him like what makes this cholent so good, and he said there's a secret ingredient. And then he asked us, "Can you spot the secret ingredient?" And none of us could spot it. And he said the secret ingredient is no potatoes. Okay, so that's the hint. So what's the other difference between the Ramams and the Ashkenaz?
I mean, I don't know how this fits in with the hint, but
Yeah.
it doesn't mention the candle, the
Yeah.
menorah, and
No potatoes,
Rambam.
right? It doesn't mention the Ramam does not have the thing about the candles. Okay, so if we have time, I have a theory about that, but the main thing we're going to focus on is this part. Okay, and we're going to refer to this as the bakasha of kashem, the request of just as. Okay, just as you did mighty miracles and mighty acts with them, so to do with us miracles and mighty acts at this time and season. So when you see this, what question or questions do you have on the Rambam's view?
Isn't that not what it's about? Like, we're not asking God for us to do miracles for us. We're just
Yeah.
commemorating people that he did.
Exactly, right? Is that like this is all of the rest of Al-Nisim is a commemoration and a recalling of what God did for us. Why are we asking for miracles now? Okay, so that's the main question: is why does the Rambam insert this bakasha? And furthermore, anyone else have any other questions or problems with this? I mean, I was slightly bothered when I started looking into this by the fact that, I mean, I can't think of a single other place where we ask Hashem to do miracles for us. Seems very weird. And if you've had shiurim that in the past in Shalhavet that we've talked about miracles, or even like this year, what is Hashem's general like attitude towards miracles in terms of doing them?
He tries not to.
He tries not to, right? So it's just a weird thing to ask Hashem to do a miracle. We talked earlier about like we only have the right to ask for miracles, like only like the tzaddikim who like Dina, or sorry, not Dina, like Leah, when she asked Dina to transform into from a boy to a girl, like if you have a certain amount of zchus, or like people in the Gemara, it's weird for us to just ask for miracles. And this is like in every Shemona Esrei according to the Rambam. Okay, so the question is, why is the Rambam insert the bakasha? The answer, shocking, is this is the authentic nusach tefilah. This is what the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah established us to say. Okay, now you might challenge me and say, how do you know? And this is where the tefilah archaeology comes in. Okay, so does anyone know the very first written down sidur? Remember, so the tefillos were created by Anshe Knesset HaGedolah in the fifth century BCE, but they weren't written down until much later. Anyone know who wrote the first sidur? It was one of the Gaonim. So it was Rav Amram Gaon. Oh, yeah, okay. You said Sadia Gaon? Okay, that's the second sitter. Okay, so Rav Amram Gaon wrote, it was in the 9th century, and we're not going to read through the whole thing, but check out how his version ends. Ukashem she'asisa imahim nes, kach kain aseh imanu Hashem Elokeinu nisim v'niflaos be'ez hazos v'noda l'shimcha hagadol sela. So he has the bakasha of kashem. He puts it in. Okay, second sitter from a major halakhic authority that we have is Sadigon sitter, and check how he ends. Okay, he was in the 10th century. Ukashem she'asisa nisim larishonim, kach ta'aseh la'acharonim, v'toshi'enu bayamim ha'elu kabayamim hahem. Okay, so he also has the bakasha of kashem. Okay, so that's the 10th century. But let's go earlier than that. Okay, do you guys? Okay, how many? Let's see. Do you remember how many mesechtos there are in Shas?
63.
63. Good. Now, have you ever heard of mesechtos katanos? So they're exactly what they sound like. They're small masechtos, okay? They were added after the time of the Amoraim, between the like 500s and like the Gaonic period. So there's one called Masechah Sofrim. They think it was written in the 8th century, okay? And here's what it says. Okay, so this is like quasi-Talmudic. It's between the Talmud and the Gaonim, okay? It says, we say in the bracha of thanksgiving, and thanks for the wonders and salvation of your Kohanim, which you have wrought in the days of Matisyahu ben Yochanan, Kohen Gadol, and the Chashmonaim, his sons. V'chein aseh imanu Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokeinu nisim v'niflaos v'noda l'shimcha lenetzach. Masechah Sofrim, 8th century, also has this nusach, okay? But more than that, if you look at I didn't want to go through all of them, but if you look at all the Rishonim who wrote about the correct ways to say tefilah, here are the people who have kashem in it. There's the Machzor Vitri, who was Rashi's student who wrote a Siddur. There's Avudiram, who's the main commentator on tefilah. There's the Ribar Yakar, who's the other main commentator on tefilah. There's the Rokeach, who's one of the main early Ashkenazic commentators on the Siddur. There's the Kolbo, who wrote his own Siddur. There's the Rashba, who explains this in Gemara, and the Meiri. And then if you look at all the we're familiar with Nusach, Ashkenaz, and Sfard, but there are a bunch of other cool old Nuschaos from other communities that have been preserved very well. So what is one of the oldest communities that has preserved their minhagim? The Yemenites. Okay, we know about them. Persian Jews also from in Iran, who have been there since like the time of Nebuchadnezzar, so they also have this in their Siddur. In Aram Tzova, which is in Syria, the Syrian Jews, they have it. Okay, Roma. There's I don't know if people know this. There's a special Jews got into Rome, like I think after the first Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, and they have their own minhagim and their own nusach. They have it. Castilla in Spain, also old Jewish community. They have it. Old France, where Rashi's from, they have it. Okay, and then just to show you what this looks like, I know these are just a bunch of names, so I found online this cool. Okay, it's good we're all on Zoom because this is really small text. Okay, so this is a chart of the influences of the Masorah of the Siddur. So you have the pre-Maccabean Second Temple era. Ezra is when tefilah was created. Post-Maccabean, that's the time of Chanukah. So you have Amram Gaon, Sadia Gaon, and Masechah Sofrim. Okay, they are around the same era. Okay, which means that it came through the Babylonian and Israelite, Palestinian yeshivos, which means it came through the rabbinic tradition through the Perushim. That's us. But then you also have it in the Ramam Siddur, who went down to Yemen. You have it in the Castilian Siddur and the Provence Siddur, which means it came through Iberia. You have the Persian Siddur, which also influenced later things there. You have Roma, you have the Hasidei Ashkenaz, Old French, and Rashi. So you see from here, it's like all of these places have it, okay? And also the Hasidei Ashkenaz there. Okay, so not only that, now you may ask me, well, why don't Ashkenazim say it? Maybe the poskim, like we hold by, say not to say it, okay? So if you had to pick 4 poskim that like Ashkenazim hold by, you'd probably say it's the Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah, the Mishnah Brura, and the Archa Shulchan. So if you look up what they say, they both bring down both versions. The Shulchan Aruch says you can say it if you want. The Ramah says you could say it if you want. The Mishnah Brura says you could say it if you want. And the Aruch Shulchan says you could say it if you want, and we do say it. Okay. So you see from here, the question is flipped on its head. Okay. If this is authentic, why don't the Ashkenazim say it? Okay. And I don't know, I should have actually asked this before, but do any of you say this? I don't even know if everyone here is Ashkenaz. Actually, I know some people are not Ashkenaz, but actually, you know what? Let me ask Danielle, if you're there, do you know if Sephardim say it? I know there's lots of different Sephardim.
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay, yeah. I checked in the Seattle Sephardic Siddur, and I guess the Seattle Sephardim don't say it, but maybe there's other Sephardim who do. Yeah. Okay. So the question is, why don't Ashkenazim say it? Okay. So there are 3 main Ashkenazic camps or teams that I saw give an explanation for why they don't say it. Okay. So the first one is the Sefer HaManhig, who's an early Ashkenazic posek. So he says, one who says at the end of Al-Anisim, just as you did with them the miracle, so too do with us, Hashem our God. This is not right, since Modim is thanksgiving, not request. Okay. So that's his argument. It's Hoda'ah, not Bakasha. Right? And that makes sense, right? Because the first brachos are Shevach, the middle brachos are Bakasha, and then the last brachos are Hoda'ah. So he says we don't put in Bakashos into Hoda'ah, okay? And then he says, I have seen in my old age in the holy city of Lunel, which is in France, that they would prevent the Chazan from saying it. Now, the fact that he says they prevent the Chazan from saying it, what does that imply about the minhag?
That the Chazan would have otherwise said it.
Chazan would have been saying it, so it implies that at least in this one city, when the Manhi came along, then like this was the minhag to say it, and then he wanted to put a stop to it. Okay. Similarly, the Maharam Me Rotenberg, who's has a big influence on the Ashkenazim, says one should not say in Al-Hanisim the Kishem, since there should be no tefilah in Hoda'ah, and tefilah here he means request. One should only say lahodos l'halo shimcha hagadol. Okay, so this is and this is based on a Gemara, by the way. The Gemara in Brachos says, Rabbi Yehuda says a person should never ask for his needs in the first three or the last three brachos, but in the middle brachos. For Rabbi Chanina says the first three brachos are like a servant who arranges praises before his master. The middle brachos are like a servant who asks for a portion from his master, and And the last three are like a servant who has received a gift from his master and excuses himself and goes away. Hold on just a second, I'm going to pause the recording. So that's what the Gemara says, and that seems to be the basis of the Maharam and the Manhig's position. Okay, so that's answer number one, is we don't say bakasha in Hodah, and modim is Hodah, and therefore we don't put it in. Now, can anyone think of an objection or an exception to this rule about, he says, they both say we don't put any requests into modim. Can you think of any exceptions? When do we put a request into modim? And it's only during 10 days of the year. That should be your hint. Aseret Yemei Tshuva, right? So we say, Uchsov l'chaim tovim kol b'nei yisecha. You should inscribe for life all the members of your covenant, okay? So the Abu Dirham objects to this reasoning. He says, the Maharam Rotenberg wrote, it's not proper to say, just as you did for them in Wonder and a Miracle, because it's not proper to say tefilah in Hodah. He says, there are those who say that since it is for the needs of the many, one may say it. Okay, so in other words, he's saying the Maharam objects to putting any bakasha in Hodah, but if we're asking for the sake of many people, then we could do it. And now he brings three examples of this. Just like one says in Hodah, Uchsov l'chaim tovim kol b'nei brisecha, right? You should inscribe us for life. That's during Aseret Yemei Tshuva, which is tefilah. Also in the bracha of Asher Ga'alanu in Pesach, this is the bracha we say at the end of Magid. That's Hodah, and we say Kain ad Hashem Yaginu Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Vosenu. We say that Hashem should bring us to other Moadim. That's a request, and that's Hodah. And also in Modim Derabanan, we say, give us life and favor us and gather in our exiles, and that's a Bakasha. And then the Budirim says, Rav Amram Gaon and Sadi Gaon and the Rambam wrote it, and therefore we say it. So he doesn't like the Maharam's reasoning. He says you should be able to make a request as long as it's for the masses. Tosfos objects in a way that's even ruder, okay? He says, there are those who don't say kashem because the sages said a person may not ask for his needs in the first three of the last three brachos. Shtushu. This is stupid. Okay. He says that reasoning is stupid, since that reasoning only applies to someone who formulates an individual request, but anything on behalf of the community is permissible. So their objection, the Tosfos and the Budirim, is we don't say personal bakashos in Hodah, but communal bakashos are totally fine. And when we ask Hashem to do miracles for us, that is a communal bakasha. It's not a personal bakasha. Okay. Any questions on this so far? Just make sure we understand this reasoning before we go on. Okay. Next, Tosfos in Megillah gives his own reasoning. He says, rather, it seems that one shouldn't say it because of another reason. Since the sages said that everything pertaining to the future was established to be said in reference to the future, but Hodah pertains to the past, it is because of this that they established that al hanisim in Hodah, which is about the past. Okay, so Tosfos is saying Hodah is about the past, which is why al hanisim fits in, because that's about the past. But kashem is a bracha, a bakasha for the future. And his rule is, he says, you don't mess with tenses that Chazal established. And he gives a couple examples of this, or there are examples of this in the Gemara. For example, what is the bracha we say right before Shemona Esrei? How does that bracha end? In Shacharis.
Ga'al Yisrael.
Ga'al Yisrael. What's the translation of Ga'al Yisrael?
Redeemer of Israel.
No, actually. The specific translation. Who redeemed Israel, right? And then in Shemona Esrei, when we have a bracha of Geula, what do we say?
Goel, present tense.
Goel, present tense, right? So Tosfos says that when Chazal set up something in the past tense or the present tense, you can't mix and match, okay? So Ga'al Yisrael, they put it in the past tense, and that should remain in the past, and then Goel Yisrael should be there also. And then the Gemara quotes another example. We say, Asher ki deshanu b'mitzvosav, that God sanctified us with his mitzvos, that's past tense. But then in the bracha of Kiddush, we say, Kadeshenu b'mitzvosacha, that's for the future. Sanctify us with your mitzvos, okay? So he says you don't mess with tenses. Okay, the last Ashkenazic authority who mentions that you don't say it is the Tur, Oh, sorry. I forgot to change the heading here. Okay, this is supposed to say Tur, Orach, Chaim, Siman, Tuf, Reish, Pei, Beis, Gimel. I think that's the source. Okay, if I remember correctly. So the Tur says there are those who don't say Kishem. My English students. Okay, tell me what the tone suggests here. Okay, if you could pick up anything on the tone. There are those who don't say Kishem because we don't say tefilah and hoda'ah. There are others who say that since it is for the needs of the many, one may say it, just like we say Yale V'yavo in the bracha of Avoda. And even though a person shouldn't ask for his needs in the first three or the last three brachos, since it is for the needs of the many, it's fine. The Seder of Amram has it, but my father and master, the Rosh, didn't say it. Instead, he would conclude with, you did for them miracles and mighty deeds in those days at this time. Okay, so maybe I'm projecting into this. Do you pick up on the tone that the Tur has about whether you should or shouldn't say it? He clearly knows you shouldn't say it because he says his father didn't say it.
Very back and forth and conflicted.
Yeah, at the very most, he's conflicted, but it almost sounds like he's saying there are good arguments for why you should say it, but I'm not going to go against my father's minhag. Okay, so that's the answer number 3, is that there are valid arguments to say it, but the Rosh didn't say it, and the Tur is the son of the Rosh, and he says it. So according to my tefilah archaeology research, these 3 positions are the only reasons why Ashkenazim don't say it. Everyone else in the world says it, okay, or at least they used to say it. All right. So what do we now have to do next? These are the facts, but what's our next challenge? What question should we ask now?
Why we said it in the first place?
Okay, so we have to, well, really the question is, okay, you're right. Okay. I mean, the real question though is why they don't say it, but the question is, what's the basis of the machlokas? So let's split it into 3 questions, one of which is what Leah just said. So for the Maharam and Manhik, how can they oppose saying kashem based on the reasoning of we don't put a bakasha and hoda'ah? What do they do with all the exceptions, especially uksov l'chaim tovim kol b'nisacha? Okay, in other words, I understand if you want to say that the Haggadah is a different thing and modim derabanan is a different thing and Yale V'yavo is a different thing, but we put a bakasha into modim. So don't tell me you don't put bakashas into modim. We do it, okay? So we have to understand that. Second, Tosfos, they say Hodah is about the past and Kashem is about the future. So what? Who cares? Okay? Like, yeah, if you change the tense of Ga'al Yisrael to Goel Yisrael, then you're actually changing the bracha that Chazal made. But if Chazal set up a request in Al Hanisim, so then you're not changing the tense. So who cares about the tenses? And then what Leah said, according to the majority of Rishonim who do say that you say it, so even though that's the correct way to say it, what exactly are we asking for and why? How do we have the right to ask Hashem for miracles? Why do we say in this time, in this season? Okay, so those are the questions there. Okay, and we're going to start with this first opinion of the Maharam and the Manhik. So why shouldn't you put a bakasha in Hoda'ah? And then how can we say uchsov l'chaim tovim kol b'nisacha? So let's start with that first question. Okay, and we have I think we have enough time for me to see if any of you have answers to this. Okay, what do you think the reasoning is here of not putting bakasha in hoda'ah? Why would that be bad?
So it kind of diminishes the hodah if we're only doing it for bakasha.
Okay.
Or it may seem like we're only doing it.
Okay, bingo, exactly, right? So I'm going to explain it that way through the Gemara here. So using the Gemara uses the servant and master analogy, right? Now, the servant, there's a time when the servant praises his master. Then the servant goes to the master and asks for his portion. I don't know if that's like a meal or like, whatever he gets. And then he thanks his master. Now, if he thanks his master and then says, but can you do something for me? So it undermines the hoda'ah to the master, okay? And I don't know if anyone's ever done this to you, but like sometimes like, when I was teaching in Shalhavet, sometimes a student would randomly come in and be like, Rabbi Schneeweiss, like, I love your classes, like I've never enjoyed it more and more, blah, 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 blah. And I'd be like, okay, thanks. But I was wondering, could you just do something for me, And it's like, they might be sincere, but it's certainly, like Ayala said, it looks insincere. It throws the Hodah into question, like like if you're supposed to be asking for stuff and you ask for stuff, so then that's fine. Like you're sincerely asking for stuff. But if you thank someone for something and then you slip in a request, it makes the thanks seem insincere. Okay, so that's why they don't want to put bakasha in the hodah. But now the question is, well, what about uchsov l'chaim tovim kol b'nei b'risacha? How can we ask God to inscribe us for life, and that doesn't pose the same problem? What do you say about that?
Maybe because that's like a request, which is asking Hashem to inscribe us for life, so that way we could continue praising Him.
Excellent, good. Okay, good. So that I think is the answer. Is if you have a bakasha for a particular good, so then that undermines the hodah. But here we're asking for life itself. That doesn't undermine it because, sorry, I actually didn't write this in the PowerPoint. Because, like Ayala is saying, that's asking for, see, what happens if we don't get life? So then there is no servant-master relationship. So asking the master to keep us alive so we can continue serving him, that is not, insincere, and that doesn't like affect the hodah in a bad way. And to the contrary, if you look at Modim, in Modim, we actually say to Hashem, we say, you are the rock of our lives, which means the lives depend on us, shield of our salvation. And then we thank him and we say, we thank you for our lives, which are in your hand, and our souls, which are entrusted to you. So in other words, when we ask Hashem for life, that is part of the Hakaras Hatov of Modim, and it's like furthering the depth of the servant-master relationship. So that's why it's not a problem, according to them, to put that specific bakasha, but all other bakashas they would have a problem with. Yeah, lady, I saw you on mute.
Yeah, but like asking for a miracle though, it's not asking for life, it's asking for.
Right, so that's why they don't say it. That's why the Maharam does not say put the miracle thing in.
So you're saying the time that people do mention miracles in Hodah, or sorry, not miracles, bakasha and Hodah is when it pertains to life and not anything.
Exactly, and that's why they say no other bakashas are permitted in Hodah, but only this one about asking for life. Okay. Okay. Any other questions on this one, or should we move on? Okay. Next one is Tosfos. Okay. What do you think Tosfos is talking about when he says Hodah is about the past and Kashem is about the future? Okay. It seems like, I don't know, like, it just doesn't seem like a very strong argument, So why? How is that good enough to oppose the bakasha of Kashem? What do you say? Any ideas? This one was harder. I had to work on this one for a couple of days, actually. Okay, so here's what my chavrus and I came up with. Okay, so Modim is Hodah for what Hashem did for us in general, right? General thanks for everything in our life. Okay. Al Nisim is Hodah for a particular good that he did. Okay, so when you're in Al Nisim, you're going off of the main theme of Modim, but it's still on topic because you're still thanking Hashem for something, okay? But if within the off-topic thing, you go further off-topic, then it no longer fits into Modim, okay? And what I mean by that is Kashem, it's not Hodah and it's about the future, okay? So it's too far off-topic to fit into the bracha. It almost is now something else, okay? And the way I'll give you two analogies, okay? One which is I'll give you the analogy that I put on the PowerPoint first, okay? So let's pretend your friend is telling you about her happy childhood, okay? Let's say like you're just having a conversation and your friend is telling you, oh, I had such a happy childhood, and all this other stuff. Now let's say your friend goes and starts talking about a story about her puppy and how her puppy was like the best puppy when she was a kid. Okay. So what are you going to think? You're going to be like, okay, so she's going on a tangent about her puppy, but like she's still talking about her childhood. Okay. But then let's say your friend says, can you come to the pet store with me next week and help me pick out a puppy for my niece? You're going to be like, whoa. Like, I thought you were talking about your childhood, So it's when you're on a main topic and you go into a subtopic, that's fine. But when you go on a subtopic to the subtopic, that's like a tangent. And I'm going to say something, and pardon Adina. You have to excuse me, Adina, for giving you PTSD here. But footnotes. Okay, footnotes in research papers. Okay, if you write a footnote on the main text, that's fine. But I've read books where there are footnotes on the footnotes, and then I'm like, that's ridiculous. Like, just write your own book. Like, write like put it into the main part of the text, or like, do something else. So that's why I think Tosfos is making a big deal about how Al HaNisim fits into Hodah, because it's about the past. But when you're asking something, if it's asking something and it's about the future, so then it's not a Hodah and it's not about the past, and it's just too off topic to fit into Modim. Okay, so therefore it's not an addition; it's an intrusion. That's the best I could come up with for Tosfos. Okay. Now, yeah, Leah.
Within the actual text, like I don't really see how it's an off topic of an off topic. I feel like it's on topic.
Because what you're supposed to be doing in Modim is thanking God for stuff. For everything, right? So you're thanking God for everything. Then you're saying, oh, there was this one story about about what happened to the Hashmonaim, and you tell the whole story. So you're already off topic on a story, but you're tying it into thanks. Okay. And then you're like, and God, do miracles for us. It's like off topic on the off topic. Like the chain works like A to B and B to C, but A to C is too far. Okay. That's my understanding of the Tosfos. Okay, so now we're left with the last question, which is, so I think I've established historically, then putting the Bakash of Kashem makes sense, but why? Like, why did Chazal institute asking for miracles? Okay, so for this, I want to show you something I don't remember in years past if I've shown this to you before, but have you guys done in any of your, I know you've had Chanukah shiurim before from Mrs. H. Fader. Did she go through the Rambam at the beginning of Hilchos Chanukah where he tells the story? Or does that sound familiar? No? Okay. So you might have seen this before, but he says this, and I'm gonna, as you can tell, I'm highlighting these lines. Okay, so remember these lines. Okay, not memorize them, but just keep them in your mind. This is the Rambam in the beginning of Hilchos Chanukah. During the era of the second Beis Mikdash, during the era of Malchus Yavan, okay, Malchus, kingship, political sovereignty, they made decrees against Israel, abolished their religion, and did not allow them to be involved in Torah and mitzvos. The Greeks stretched forth their hand into Israel's money and women, and they entered into the sanctuary, breached the barriers, and rendered the pure impure. They caused Israel great distress and oppressed them exceedingly, until the God of our fathers had mercy on them and saved them from their hands. Okay, the Hashmonaim, the great Kohanim, overpowered them and killed them, and they saved Israel from their hand. They appointed a melech from the Kohanim, and the Malchus returned to Israel for over 200 years until the destruction of the second Beis Mikdash. Okay. Now, if you just read this, you'd be like, oh, Rambam is just telling us like background for Chanukah. Okay, but if you look elsewhere in the Mishnah Torah, the first place where the Rambam describes Mashiach, okay, you will note some parallels. Okay, so check this out. So this is in the context of Mashiach. Because of all this, the prophets and the wise men of Israel desired the era of Melech HaMashiach, so they can gain relief from an evil Malchus which does not allow them to be involved in Torah and mitzvos properly, so they can find tranquility, increase their wisdom, and merit life in Olam Haba. In those days, there will be an increase of knowledge, wisdom, and truth, as it is stated, for the entire world will be filled with knowledge of Hashem. And then he goes on with more psukim. Then he says, Yemos HaMashiach is Olam Hazeh, and the world will continue in its natural order, except that the Malchus will return to Israel. The early sages said the only difference between Olam Hazeh and Yemos Mashiach is Shibud Malchios alone. In other words, the only difference, Rambam didn't hold that there were going to be miracles that characterize Yemos Mashiach. The only difference is the Malchus will go from the nations of the world to us, and we will be the Malachim. Okay, so you'll notice there are parallels between Chanukah and Mashiach. Okay, both of them involved an evil Malchus that prevents us from being involved in Torah and mitzvos properly. So in the case of Chanukah, it was Greece. Nowadays, it's the Malchios that are around now. Now, obviously, America is not actively suppressing us from being involved in Torah and mitzvos, but because we're in Galus, we cannot be involved in all the mitzvos. We have foreign ideas and influences. We have certain obstacles to keeping Torah and mitzvos, from other things. So it's all a result of the fact that we are in exile under foreign malchus. Step 2, Hashem saves us. He saved us in the time of Hanukkah. He will save us in the time of Mashiach. And step 3, the Malchus will return to Israel. And in the time of Hanukkah, it returned to Israel for over 200 years, but then it was taken away again. At the time of Yemos Mashiach, then it will come back and stay forever. Okay, now, given this, why do you think we ask Hashem to do miracles for us just like he did for them?
This is pretty much like we're asking for Mashiach, and that like it's okay to ask for miracles for, because it's like when Hashem is going to reveal himself to the world.
Okay, good. And how does that fit into, how is that appropriate for Modim and Al Hanisim?
Maybe like it would itself like praise his name if Mashiach were to happen.
Okay, good. Gula, what were you gonna say?
That it's for everyone, and
okay,
it's also
and it
survival of the Jewish people.
Okay, good. So it is so it checks off all the boxes. Okay, I'm gonna go one step further, which is when you put Al Hanisim, when you conclude it with Kashem, you're contextualizing Chanukah as one step on the road to the ultimate Geula. Okay, in other words, in the Ashkenazic version of Al Hanisim, it feels like we are just talking about the events of Chanukah. But the events of Chanukah were not a standalone event. Chanukah was a brief sampling of what it's going to be like in the ultimate Yemos HaMashiach and the ultimate Geula. And we were plunged back into exile, but we are still continuing on the road to the ultimate Geula. And in fact, what popular song also highlights how Chanukah was just one step on the road of Galus and Geula and Galus and Geula?
Hishamda.
Hishamda definitely does that. That's also true. I was thinking of a Chanukah song.
Ma'us Tzur?
Ma'us Tzur, right? Is that all of Ma'us Tzur, every stanza is basically showing how in every generation there was there's the Greek exile, and then we were redeemed. And then there's the Purim threat, and then we were redeemed. And then there's the Chanukah thing, and we were redeemed. And then ultimately there's going to be an ultimate Geula. So based on this, I think it's two things. It's a greater Pirsumei Nisa, it's a greater publicizing of the miracle, because what we're doing is we're showing that what was the point of the Chanukah miracle, not just so we could be free, but so that we could continue to serve Hashem and be involved in Torah and mitzvos and move towards the ultimate state. And it's also better Hodah, because we're not just thanking Hashem for saving our ancestors and doing that for them. We're thanking Hashem for furthering the cause, the ultimate cause of like the ultimate Geula, and showing that the reason why we care about Hanukkah, the Hanukkah miracle, is because Hashem allowed them to be involved in Torah. So it fits into Hanukkah theme of Pirsumei Nisa, and fits into Modim because it's a greater Hakaras HaTov. Okay. Did I have anything else here? Yeah. Oh, so yeah. Does that make sense? Because that's we have one more step on this. Okay, now this question, I apologize to those who are only here for the Friday session, because in our tefilah group in Lomdeha, we dealt with this at length, but how do we have the right to ask for miracles? So in our tefilah group in Lomdeha, we went over another miscitation, hold on, copied and pasted. So this is the Bechor Shor on Shabbos Daf ? Okay, I don't remember where it is. You can ask me for the sources later on. So the Bechor Shor says, he's talking about davening for miracles. He says, certainly an individual may not daven for a personal miracle, for who's to say that he's worthy? But if he davens that a miracle should be done on behalf of the many, like in the liturgy, may the merciful one do miracles for us, then this is fine. Likewise, all the texts in the Piyutim, which mention that we daven for a miracle, all of them are in the plural. Furthermore, we must differentiate between miracles that are done in a natural manner. That's what we call nes nister, meaning that there's no open violations of nature, such as the wars of the Chashmonaim, which were miracles done in a natural manner, which is not the case regarding the transformation of a female into a male. This is what we were doing in our davening group, which is described in the Gemara Brachos 60a, in which Leah asked that the baby she was carrying be transformed from a male into a female, which is a miracle not done in the natural manner at all. To daven for a miracle like that, meaning a supernatural miracle, would be a tefilah shav, a prayer in vain, unless you are on a high level that you get miracles like that. Therefore, one must be careful not to daven that a miracle be done for him, which is outside of the natural manner. So what we saw from the Bechor Shor is we are totally allowed. So yes, it's inappropriate to ask for miracles in general, but if you're asking for a natural miracle, meaning a hidden miracle, as opposed to supernatural, and it's on behalf of the many, then that's totally fine. Okay. And when we ask for God to do miracles for us like he did for them, then that is asking for a natural miracle. Okay. Now you might object to this and say, well, wasn't there a supernatural miracle in Chanukah of the oil? That was supernatural. Okay. But guess what the Rambam doesn't mention in his Al Hanisim? Okay, he doesn't mention the miracle of the candles, right? He has the whole miracle of the war, and he says, just like you did miracles for them, so too you should do miracles for us. Now, the Rambam does hold by the miracle of the candles. He mentions it in the Mishnah Torah, but he doesn't hold that we're asking for a miracle like that. He holds we're asking for a natural miracle on behalf of the many. Okay, so to sum it all up, okay, each position is as follows. The Maharam and the Manhig hold that you do not include the bakasha of kashem in Hodah because it undermines the Hodah, right? If someone thanks you for stuff and then asks you for something, it throws into question the sincerity or the character of the Hodah. Tosfos says that because kashem is so different in content and intent, meaning it's a request instead of thanks and it's for the future instead of the past, it's too off script or off topic to include without being an interruption. It's a foreign interruption in the bracha. So that's why he holds you don't say it. But he holds you can say a request for the many, just like Uchsov L'chaim Tovim. And then the Manhig and the Maharam also hold you can ask for life, okay? And then the other Rishonim hold that concluding all Hanisim with Kashem, it contextualizes Chanukah as one step on the road to the ultimate Geula. And that's an enhancement of the Pirsum Hanes of publicizing the Chanukah miracle, and it's also a better Hodah because you're appreciating the true good that Hashem did for us in the Chanukah miracle. Any questions on this? This is the end of everything except for we have one takeaway message afterwards. Okay.
It all fits very perfectly. That's all. It all fits very perfectly. It's
good.
It's like it ties up very well.
Okay, good. We're gonna make it tie up even better. Okay. Takeaway message. So we have one tefilah left in Chanukah in 2020, which is Mincha this afternoon. Okay. I think you'd agree with me, need Nisim this year more than ever. Okay. I think this is a year where we could all use Nisim. And I'm not just talking about the pandemic. I'm talking about the state that our country is in, like everyone not getting along. I'm talking about like the Trump administration, the Biden administration. I'm talking about like all of government has got its problems. Not just the pandemic also, but the coronavirus vaccines, problems of logistics of that, Iran, and Israel, there's a bunch of bad stuff going on in the world. And I think we really need miracles. So you have to remember, again, I'm not a posek, okay, and I'm not poskening, but remember, the Shulchan Aruch says you could say it. The Ramah says you could say it. The Mishnah Berurah says you could say it. Aruch HaShulchan says you could say it, okay? If you do ask Hashem for Nisim by putting Kashem into your modim in this next Shemona Esrei, or if you feel very squeamish about putting it in modim, everyone holds you could put it into Shema Kolenu, okay? Just remember why we're asking for miracles, okay? It's true that the miracles I just mentioned of solving the pandemic and making America get along with itself and Israel and world peace, these are all good, but that's not the end goal of asking for these things. We want to ask for these things so that we can be more involved in Torah and mitzvos and Chachma and Emes and Yedias Hashem, so that we can, hold on a second, that's a 1 minute warning for myself, so that we can be involved in doing Hashem's will and ultimately bring about the ultimate geula, okay? So when you ask for miracles, remember that it's on behalf of the many, and it's for a goal. It's not just to bring you personal pleasure or personal relief. It's so that we can bring about the ultimate state where the entire world will be filled with knowledge of Hashem, like the waters that cover the seabed. And I will say, not in the context of tefilah, but Kashem she'asisa imam nisim ugvuros kacha se imam nisim ugvuros ba'es uva'ona hazos. And I will leave this up here in case any of you do want to write it down to say in your Shemona Esrei for Mincha. But that's the end of the shiur. And if, as usual, if there are any questions, then I'll stick around answering questions. But if not, then have a happy last 4 hours and 15 minutes of Hanukkah and a good Shabbos.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
So when we ask for Nisim in this thing, the parallel which you were showing, aren't the Nisim that we're asking for Nisim to bring about Mashiach, not just Nisim to say whatever?
Right. So the way I'm understanding it is the Nisim that Hashem did in the time of Hanukkah was to restore the avoda in the Beis Hamikdash and the Shechina. And that's really why we care about the miracle of the oil. Is the miracle of the war was the main miracle in terms of the main intervention. But Hashem did the miracle of the oil to show us that the Shekhinah is still with Klal Yisrael, and that the outcome of the war is not Israel military victory, but we can now resume our avoda in the Beis Hamikdash, and that's why we call it Chanukah, because it was like a rededication of the Beis Hamikdash. So that is the parallel that we're saying. Just like you did miracles for them to enable them to throw off the evil malchus, to be involved in avodas Hashem properly, so to do miracles for us to remove us from the evil malchus, so we can be involved in avodas Hashem properly in the ultimate state, which will last forever.
It's asking for miracles so it can be involved in Torah. It's not asking for the miracles of Mashiach. Yeah,
not asking for the miracles of that, and that's why, again, especially according to the Ramam, there are no miracles that will bring about Mashiach. It's I guess miracles to get us there. Just to this is going off topic, but like Ramam holds that Tchias HaMesim is a miracle, right, and that's going to happen in the future. But he does not hold that is a miracle of Yemos HaMashiach, So whether some theorize that Tchias HaMesim is needed in order to establish Yemos HaMashiach, but Yemos HaMashiach itself will not be characterized by miracles. And the reason why I'm bringing that up now is even the Rambam holds that there could be miracles that will lead to Mashiach. It's just that the Messianic era will not have miracles in it once it starts, Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Also, how, the thing, the Hanukkah.
Yeah, sorry, Leah, go ahead.
The Hanukkah story kind of led into this idea. The Hanukkah story portrays this idea, and that's why you put it into Hanukkah. Could you explain that idea again?
The Hanukkah story, you mean why we put all this Hanukkah story into Al Hanisim?
No, there was a thing on your slide. Can you go back a few slides?
This?
Contextualization, yeah. Contextualization has one step. Could you explain that again?
Yeah. In other words, if in the Ashkenazic version of Al Hanisim, then we are only talking about the past, and it ends with the winning of the war, But in our version, we're saying that the events that we're giving Hashem thanks on, that series of events should continue through today, So it's looking to the future and saying that the process back then was not complete. In fact, that's in the Rambam, he says also and they appointed the Melech from the Kohanim and the Malchus returned to Israel for 200 years until the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash. So the story's not over yet. We are now in that time period. And so therefore, when we ask Hashem to, when we thank Hashem for those miracles, for what he did for them, and we say, so to do for us, we're saying that the story is still continuing. It wasn't just a past event, it's an ongoing story. And we want you to bring us to the conclusion of that story in Yemos Mashiach. And in that sense, it is very much like the Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim in Pesach, because we spend the part before the meal talking about the past, about Sipur, about the events of Mitzrayim. And then after the meal, we say Hallel about the future redemption, asking Hashem for redeeming us in the future, because it is part of Sipur. It's one ongoing story that will end in the Yemos Mashiach.
So basically, if you don't connect it to Mashiach, you're not connecting it to the ultimate goal of Hanukkah.
Of Hanukkah, exactly, yeah. And you still are telling the story of Hanukkah, but you're just not referencing anything beyond the events in the past, And the events of Hanukkah still are unfolding because we're still in the exile that the story of Hanukkah ended with.
Right. So in theory, if you connect the hardship that we're going through to Gala, in that way, you can still connect it to Mashiach.
Right. It's just that in our Ashkenazic version of Al Hanisim, it does not connect it to the present Galus. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Have a good Shabbos.
Thank you.
Have a good Shabbos. Happy last couple of hours of Hanukkah.